And we're live. It's Wednesday night, so that means Drew's in the house, and we're gonna chill and catch up for a bit. Make sure the sound level's good, nice and low. Yep. All right. Tell me about your weekend, man.
Ooh, well, let's see here. We had a weekend and a couple weeks here full of trying to win at things.
Uh huh.
Um and it's been good. It's been a lot of winning. Um but now there's a lot of fatigue too.
What what
So,
what
trying
what have you been winning?
to good question. Um well, I got sick of World of Warcraft. I kind of beat it in a sense, beat the end game sort of. Um, in that I pushed Mythic Pluses as far as realistic. Um, and then I started playing StarCraft again, StarCraft 2,
Mm-hmm.
and that felt good. Um, but then it occurred to me today, any identification will cause pain. The only difference is what type of pain, right? So
Mm-hmm.
at first you start playing StarCraft and you're like, "Oh, this is fun," and like the fact that I've been off the game for so long, there's no pressure to be good, so everything like makes more sense. Like, like of course I'd make mutas off of two bases in this scenario. Of course I'm gonna get Overlord speed and scout at 430. Of
Yeah.
course he's playing on one base, so I'll just make a bunch of roaches and smoke him. Um
Like
and then it
you're not
feels
so far into your head, you know?
you're not so far into your head, there's no identity. You're also coming off of like the fact that you haven't played in 6 months, so it's like exciting and new, and the graphics are so pretty, and you like, yeah, you nailed it. You're not in your head. You also don't care about losing.
Yeah.
If someone happens to be better than you, you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, 200 APM, and you're great, yeah, good job, I don't care. um but yeah, so I'm like 6 days into that, and then of course the losses start hitting. The wins start to feel less. Like, I think it was the day before this weekend, I said to myself, well, I'm not gonna queue up a game after I beat somebody. I'm gonna go do a chore, and then I'll come back and play a game. But of
Mm-hmm.
course today, I just keep requeuing, and the body's hurting. I got a ton of steps yesterday and a workout in yesterday for the first time in a while, so
Yep.
still fighting off a cold, and so everything's hurting, and so I'm like, I sleep for very little um today. Just things didn't go right, and so I sit down and play a few games, and then all of a sudden, like, the identity kicks in, and now I'm identified as a StarCraft player, and now everything's changed.
Uh-huh.
Not um so so yeah, just dealing with some of the backlash of that. And yeah, and then sitting with this whole loss of control feeling, right? Because a lot of the attempts to win are attempts to deal with my inability to control things. Um So, of course, now I have to sit with that, because once the high wears off and you have to deal with your shit, you have to clean your room, right?
Yeah. You know, it's funny you mentioned getting back on some RTS because I had a little bit of a foray myself. Um, it was far more casual, but my coworker James asked if I could dust off the old Warcraft 3, and
Mm.
I was like, yeah, sure thing. Like, I haven't played Warcraft 3 in over a year. Um, and I've never laddered on it. I will only like play friends or like campaign. But yeah, it was really fun. Like we played like 3 matches, and he won one, and I got the next two. But it was all very close, and I was like, you know, it's kind of cool to like be able to play RTS with someone that's like similar skill level, and you just don't have to like practice and ladder and all that stuff. So I kind of had
Sure.
like an opposite experience, almost like we only played for about an hour, and I felt kind of boosted after that, a little friendly competition.
Yeah. Fun.
You've never played Warcraft 3, have you?
No. No.
Uh, it's a fantastic game.
Mm.
It's like obviously similar to StarCraft, except it's maybe 25% of the macro, and then like 75% micro.
Mm.
Um, you just, because it revolves around a hero unit, so it plays a little like Warcraft 3 was the precursor to MOBAs. So
Did you guys play the remade version or just the original or?
yeah, the remade one, because I think that's the only one that you can play now. They shut down the other one.
Oh, okay.
And plus, like, I think I bought that game 2 or 3 times, and I would always lose the CD. So it's kind of better to just, have the BattleNet license, so you just install whenever. Um, but it's a very fun game. It's probably the best Warcraft, they ever made. Um, with classic WoW being their second best, and then kind of progressively falling off of that. But I do think it's their masterpiece.
Mm.
And I just because it bears, I have to say it again. I'm the only one, as far as I know, on the internet predicting that we're going to get Warcraft 4 because of the purchase of Microsoft. I think that they're going to sick their Age of Empires team on it, and it's going to be amazing. But they won't announce it until they're done making expansions for Age of Empires 4. Like, so essentially, you'll more or less know that they're going to announce as soon as like Age of Empires 4 is just on fire. It's the world's top RTS, but as soon as that cools off, they're going to announce Warcraft 4, and no one else is saying that. So
Mm.
I got that one from full court.
I believe you. I believe you. I have faith.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a pretty low key weekend. We people couldn't get together for D&D, which is what I normally do on Saturday. So just kind of laid low. Um, I'm still in like a rebuilding my finance situation, which essentially means spending as little money as possible.
Mm.
But and I've been going through it with Fidium. I now have 4 failed attempts at getting fiber optic internet. I keep
Ooh.
thinking, all right, tomorrow's going to be the day, and there's just loads of complications. But that upgrade is coming, which is going to help the quality of the stream, and um, definitely a lot more upload capacity. That's the major thing, because it basically, if I want to upload something to YouTube, I have to tie up my computer and like not use it for like several hours. So it's very tough
Yeah.
to time that. But but it's on the horizon. I'm sure they'll figure it out eventually. You know, um, but looking forward, summer's almost starting. Like, you got any plans for summertime?
Well, got a couple of trips coming up. Gonna visit Alaska in one of them. Um,
Really?
yeah, so
Wow.
that should be nice. Yeah. Um, we're gonna be taking off out of Ottawa. So we just got the passports updated, and they're here. Um, just gonna meet some sled dogs, maybe see some orcas. Should be pretty dope.
Wow. You know, my family lived in Alaska for a while. I mean,
Really?
before I was born. Yeah. Um, you know, my grandparents are from Connecticut originally, and my grandfather had a electrician's business, and he was plagued by an intense wanderlust. I think that's probably partially where I get it from. He couldn't stay in one place for very long, and so they kept
Mm.
moving the business, ever westward, kind of emulating the westward expansion of colonial America, and they made it all the way to Alaska. They spent they stayed the longest in Colorado and Alaska, being as those are two very pretty states. And once they had kind of lived in all the places, they came back to New England.
Mm.
So that was probably over the course of like a few decades, just inching to the west.
Mm.
But I've never been to Alaska myself. The furthest west I've been was when I went out and saw you over there in California, which is pretty west. It's pretty west,
Mm.
but haven't made it to the Hawaii or the Alaska yet.
Yeah, yeah, should be interesting. I've heard that, is it Alaska or Antarctica that the everything's just bigger. The
I know
I don't
Alaska
know if
has
the
that for
oxygen.
sure. Um,
Gotcha.
it's like the northwest states. I mean, are kind of a similar biome. So
Mm.
like Northern California into Oregon and Washington, very very similar. Like where they have the sequoia trees, the grizzly bears, all kinds of
Mm.
big stuff. Um, but I know one of the things about Alaska is that they have like seasons where it'll be either like fully dark pretty much all day or like fully light for an entire day, depending on what time of year you're in. So I think it goes, yeah, so like summertime, it will be light almost the entire day, and winter
That's crazy.
the opposite. Yeah. It's
That's
just,
bonkers.
yeah. I worked with a guy that lived in Alaska in nuclear, and what he spent his free time doing was like not World of Warcraft, but he was grinding gold. He had like a very industrial sized gold business, but he was the only employee. So he had like trailers and backhoes and conveyor belts, and he would just you know basically Bitcraft gold, but in real life. And
Wow.
yeah, there's still a lot of gold up in Alaska, but it's a very harsh wilderness, so um, it stays relatively untouched. Only the most
Yeah.
extreme of gold miners. Back when there was gold in California, everyone's like, "Of course I'll move to California to mine gold, obviously." But then
Yeah.
when it's like, "Oh, how about Alaska? The Arctic Circle." People are like, "I don't think I want the gold that bad." But pretty interesting guy. And if you're wondering, yes, he did look like a stereotypical prospector. Like a prospector Pete. Had like the big old mustache that could be like a broom, and just like a very stocky, like dwarfish build. And I was like, yeah, yeah, you definitely were born to mine. Um, but that was the thing. He was just doing it for fun. It just so happens that you can then sell the stuff for money. But that's why he didn't have any employees or anything. He's like, nah, that was basically just his World of Warcraft was just digging through the wilderness.
Wow.
So,
What a
um,
life.
in other news, my game that I'm really hot on, that Monsters and Memories, got delayed to October. It was going to come out June, which means there's a bit more time to test. And um, what made me think of it was the way that his name was Dave, Prospector Dave. Um, he really enjoyed the working for yourself aspect, and like, you know, nothing's ever on like a timetable, like, oh, you need to find this much gold by this time or we're out of business. Um, that was echoed with like the leader of Monsters and Memories, because that game's being made by like 10 friends, and they said because they have denied all attempts at people trying to invest in their game, they have no one to answer to, so they can delay the game without screwing up anybody's money, except, you know,
Yeah.
except for their own. And because they're just making the game for fun, like they're making it like in the purest sense, because they're like, there aren't any MMOs that we want to play, so we're gonna make the one that we want to play. You know,
Yeah.
so like if it's not up to snuff, they're just, you know, let it go a few more months. And I think that that is the future of gaming as an art form, because like it was kind of really showcased with Expedition 33, because that was 33 people that were disillusioned with the game industry, and they wanted to just, you know, make a game just for the sake of making something good, you know, not really caring if it makes money or not. So
Yeah.
I think that um, that's what I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, the audience, like the general public of gamers, would have kind of scoffed at that. But they're so thirsty now for something authentic that we're going to see more and more of the old companies kind of dwindle, possibly go bankrupt, as you know, the real artists flourish.
Yeah.
And really, it's a similar story with Bitcraft. You know, it's a small group of guys. I can't remember how many people work there. I want to say it's only, you know, 10, 20 people, something like that. And
Mm.
they haven't set a hard line on their 1.0 release, um, because they want to make sure it's good. The difference is they do have investors, but they were given a pretty loose leash, because the investors are investing more in the server technology, not so much the game. Like they don't really care what happens with the game. They just want the server technology. And these are people like Nvidia, Microsoft, you know, all the big names. So that's what they're going for. But
Mm.
yeah, I think that going forward, you know, it's like a pendulum thing, right? Like we kind of got what happens when like you just keep adding more money, keep being marketing focused, you know, keep being
Yeah.
focused on the bottom line, and we kind of saw that progression with media go to the umpteenth degree, and
Yeah.
because you know, I was just saying to Jason the other day, I was like, I remember there was a time when I was younger when throwing more money at it definitely meant a better product. And maybe I was also in a different mindset, but that also just seemed to be where most people were at, you know? It
Yeah.
like the $2 million game beats the $1 million game, and the $10 million game beats that game. And but, you know, just like circling back to your first point about winning, it can only go so far before it fatigues, you know? That chase, it only leads
Mm.
to a wall inevitably. So
It's so
now
true.
so now we're seeing, you know, $500 million projects crash and burn, make no money. So, um, but It's good news, you know, for the peasantry like us that don't have a lot of money, because it means that you're not completely left out if you don't have a ton of money behind you. You really, authenticity is going to be the currency. It already is, but I think it's going to increase, especially as more AI stuff propagates. You know, that's going to become very popular. A lot of people think, you know, that's the future of film and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, the AI stuff probably beats the Disney stuff, but I don't think that the AI stuff beats the authentic media. Like, you know what I mean? Like in the hierarchy of swinging. I still think like a really well made like Christopher Nolan movie will still smoke an AI movie. But certainly, like as far as like kids movies and stuff like that, I think AI people could probably smoke DreamWorks and Disney and stuff.
Yeah. Did you know that DreamWorks was created by the creator of Lion King and Aladdin, and he got fired because he wanted royalties on those movies.
Oh,
So
I did not know
they
that.
refused to give it to him, so he created DreamWorks.
Okay, that's I knew of another Disney spin-off, which was Don Bluth. You know Don
Huh?
Bluth?
No.
You've probably seen about 20 of his movies. Maybe thought that they were Disney. But he worked at Disney during the golden age, like when it was like 70s, you know, like Robin Hood, Jungle Book,
Yeah.
Aristocats, like all that time. But he spun off and he did stuff like the Troll in the Central Park and All Dogs Go to Heaven and Fern Gully.
Oh
Um,
wow. Fern
you know,
Gully is dope, dude, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's yeah,
But you know
it's
what I
so
mean?
good that
Like,
I can't like Avatar.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, Don Bluth was the top talent at Disney. So if you take any one of his movies, they're all better than anything that, you know, branched off.
Mm.
Um, he's probably my second favorite animator. Yeah, so get this. I just typed him into Google because, like I said, you've probably seen like 20 of his movies: American Tail, Secret of Nim, Anastasia, Land Before Time,
Oof.
Rockadoodle, Titan AE, um, Bartok, The Pebble and the Penguin. Whoa, man, so many, honestly. Oh, uh, yeah, Anastasia.
Anastasia's a dope movie.
Yeah, so like I said, they look like Disney movies because he was the lead animator at Disney in the 70s. So
Yeah.
a lot of people think that like Don Bluth movies are Disney movies, which kind of, because he was Disney before he spun off. So,
Yeah.
kitty cat, what are you doing? You're struggling to get balance. You need to go up to your perch. She's like trying to sit on my leg, but just like wobbling all over the place. Um, so, this summer is probably the first summer since 2020 that I'm gonna try and lay low a bit again to kind of stack cash, and like because I'm not really sure if I'm moving or not, I don't want to make any big commitments. So,
Yeah.
you know, see how that goes.
Yeah. When do you hear back from that job?
Uh, you know, I'm trying to remember when I even did the interview. It's got to be almost a month ago, but they said 1 to 2 months because they only hire in the summer. So,
Oh, okay.
which makes sense. Like, you know, we're the competition. We only hire in the summer as well
Yeah.
because spring and fall is outage season, and then winter is holidays. So They occasionally might bring someone in like after New Year's, but generally they aim for the summertime, and that's also, you know, when it's preferable to move for most people. You know,
Yeah.
clear roads and such.
Ooh. Yeah, that makes sense, man. Makes sense. Why do they pay more? By the way, is it a different job title or?
Um, no, I think it's just supply and demand. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Um, there's just not a lot of real senior techs in the industry right now, and I mean that because like they were at an all-time low for senior techs at one point a few years ago, and they just changed the um, whatchamacallit, the why can't I think of it? The prerequisites. Um, so essentially, there's a federal law that states that you have to have so many people. I don't know how it is for other departments, but you have to have a minimum amount of qualified senior RPs on site, you know, in case there's a disaster, basically. And
Yeah.
so, like, you can't turn the lights on unless you have, like, it's a different number depending on the size of the plant, but you might need to have, like, 50 people on site at all times. And so you just can't run your business if you don't have that. And so the industry was looking at how they just didn't recruit enough, train enough. And they're like, we're all going to go out of business if we don't lower those standards like really fast. So they essentially made it so that people could get there in like 30% of the time or less, and, you know, just kind of pencil whip so that they can say to the government, yeah, we have seniors. But the government didn't push back and say, but they're not real seniors. But
Mm.
but circling back to the more money thing, you know, obviously when it comes to, you know, the not nuclear plant side, you know, these little shops where they're building specialty equipment and they only need to have like 1, 2, 3, 4 RPs. They don't want the 1 year senior. They want the 10+ year one.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and we're at a point where those basically just don't really exist anymore. So I'm a little bit like a unicorn in that regard. So
Gotcha.
it's a, you know, it's the sweet spot of the supply and demand curve.
Nice. Well, good. Good news.
Sure. It's like it's good to feel needed. I'll say
Yes.
like like my old pal Ernie says, I want my friends to use me. You know, I don't want them to abuse me, but I want my friends to use me.
Yes.
So,
Ernie. Oh man. Ooh. So how about you? How's your week been? Weekend week.
well, like I said, I kind of just laid low. Um, you know, just did a bit of Bitcraft, and um, I took Tuesday off to try and get fiber, and it didn't happen. But yeah, nothing too wild going on. Um, Particularly, you know, slow week for news too. Sometimes it's like feast or famine, but there wasn't a whole lot going on. Other than, I guess the only noteworthy thing like in the news that was kind of interesting was Joe Rogan got a piece of legislation in. He basically called up Trump and told him to make an executive order to legalize medicinal use of psychedelic drugs to treat addiction. So
Oh,
so that happened. Um, and and what little I know about it, I know it's decently effective. Um, I remember reading a study that like oh, you know what? Before I get too off the rails, 1 second here. I forgot to put my dang filters on. Oopsies. That's okay. We've been very G-rated for a minute, but if I'm gonna venture into this
yes.
topic, let me just go ahead and fix myself. Uh,
Sounds
oops.
good.
We go over here, and then we go over here. It's funny. I streamed Monsters and Memories last night, but I didn't change the game category. And this kid comes in, he's like, "That's not Bitcraft." I'm like, "Oh, oops." I'm just gonna pop over here, get it to where I want it. I think that's good. Sensitive issues warning. Sensitive issues. So I read a study that MDMA was effective at treating alcoholism, but I had already witnessed that firsthand, like a decade before the literature came out. I had a very textbook compulsory alcoholism pattern, and it was immediately and abruptly smashed. You know, the first time that I tried MDMA, and it's never come back. That's not to say that I never drank again, but I could never drink like that, just like indiscriminately and sort of. I would say what's kind of marked by the disease is sort of like the illusion of the addiction, like when it becomes like very dishonest, particularly with yourself. That's like a decent marker of being in the throes of it.
Sure.
And but yeah, after I had that experience, I could never really be I couldn't, even if I wanted to, I just couldn't really be dishonest about it ever again. So I would say it's highly effective for that, just from an anecdotal standpoint. But then I also saw the study, and part of this executive order is probably going to touch into that. I didn't read the whole thing, but what am I doing here? I just got swings. Sometimes you just get random swing noises. Like there's nothing happening. It's just you just get them. But yeah, so that happened, and the top comment on the video was, if you would have told me 20 years ago that the host of Fear Factor was going to get the host of The Apprentice to sign an executive order in the Oval Office legalizing medicinal use of psychedelics, I would have thought you were crazy. But
Yeah.
that's just kind of how life is. It's it doesn't really care about your preconceived notions.
True. That's very true. Um. Yeah. I've I had a nice talk with a random stranger about this topic yesterday. Um. He lives in Bali, of all places. Was born and raised here. Lives there now.
Hmm.
We were talking about different drugs and their effects on consciousness. Really, I guess you could say, lucky encounter because the stranger happened to be pretty nice to talk to.
Right.
But yeah, we talked for like an hour or two about this stuff, and one of the things that stands out to me is over the last couple years, I did a bunch of research into arm wrestling. Very fascinating sport, and it is a sport. um, there's at least as many tricks as any other as any other sport, in my opinion.
Yep.
But the kind of the top level guy, well, I guess he's number two in the world for a couple of years now, probably. He was a war vet, and he was talking about Special K and his experience with clinics to heal traumatic stress and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and the guy yesterday, he didn't have any experience with K, but we were literally talking about um, enlightenment and like sort of being open. Because his kind of opening line was, "I don't really like coming back to the U.S. anymore," and this, of course, doesn't surprise me. But interested in the conversation, I say, "Oh, why not?" And so he starts to go into his opinions, but like kind of realizing that like you can't normally talk about this stuff openly. Most people are very guarded towards changing their mind or admitting they were wrong or anything like that. So
Right.
um yeah, anyways, so it was just kind of a cool conversation, but the I love that. I think that's fantastic.
Did
Like
he say like
um
why he picked Bali? It's like a pretty obscure one.
he did not um he did say it was pretty overcrowded with tourists these days. He said it's Indonesia and like the most crowded island in Indonesia, according to him.
Probably
Um,
like a like a South Pacific Hawaii type of place, I imagine.
yeah, he's older. He did 24 years firefighter, the rest of his career as an EMT. He now teaches um in the kind of paramedics industry, and he comes back here to see his brother. So he was an older dude, no family, no kids, or I should say
Right.
no wife, no kids.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so he's just here periodically. Um, but yeah, really good dude. And he knew I shared with him I mostly listened, but I did share with him a little bit the Alien Channeler.
Mm.
Um, and I brought up this guy Sad Guru, who I know very very little about, but he was on Joe Rogan, and so
Mm.
he's kind of like one of the more famous people like in the sphere of like yogis.
Okay.
So so the type of books that I would read, but some of the more popular one. And he goes, "Oh, I know that guy," and he basically shared that that Bali was a central hub for spiritual thinkers, outside the box thinkers. And I of course, wanting to pull out as much information as I could from him, because, like I said, it was a good chat. He shared that um, he said that this place was very spiritual without being religious or whatever. Or when he said it was very like a kind of a hub. I said, "How so? Tell me more about that." And he gave an example that they do this. Their New Year's is this event where um, they worship evil for a day. So they make these big, scary looking demons out of paper mache and bamboo poles, high up in the sky, and they do this big day of worshiping evil based off the fact that without evil there can't be good, which means there can't be this simulation that we inhabit.
Okay.
And then they burn the effigy at the end of the day, and they tell the evil to return, to where it spawned from or whatever. And then the next day they spend the entire day like kind of like quiet, like it's like a quiet day, like no mopeds, you stay in your house, like a full on Sabbath, right? Day
Yeah.
of quiet, day of rest.
Big
And that's their
reset.
new year. And then big reset, and I was like, that's fucking beautiful, man. You know, like, um,
Yeah. Also, yeah, there's something to taking something and kind of ceremoniously burning it. You know,
absolutely, yeah.
something to that. Um, Obviously, there's the big festival, Burning Man, that does that. I heard about a Star Wars one where they it's like a Star Wars convention, but like they also like burn an effigy of, it's like Darth Vader or the Emperor or something like that. So you find this like in a lot of different groups and places. But I think there's something to it. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. I personally haven't been to any of these like burn events, but um, just kind of heard about it from the outside.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's awesome, right? Like anything to help people like heal from trauma is a step in the right direction.
That's how that's
Healing one
yeah,
of us.
that's how the Lord of the Rings ends is when they burn the evil item, the ring.
Mm, yeah,
Cast it into the fires of Mount Doom.
yeah. But anything to heal one of us is a step to heal all of us, right? So,
Right.
war vets and anybody really, it's a big step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot better than what I would generally say here is, you know, people dress fancy, get sloppy drunk, and then try to set a record for car crashes. That's that's our country's tradition.
Yeah, well, steps in the right direction, with this Joe Rogan bill passing. Like we gotta celebrate
Yeah,
the little wins,
true, true.
Got to.
Yeah, yeah, because there's the addiction thing is such a multifaceted thing. I do think that it it has like a spiritual layer to it, psychological, economic.
Mm.
There's even a bit of warfare thrown in there. Um, so it's a very multifaceted thing, um, but it's kind of cool, I guess, that um, Joe Rogan can just call or text the president and whip something up real quick. Um, you
That
know,
is cool.
kind of kind of using his powers for good
Sounds
because
like another win.
yeah, it's sort of like I don't really see Joe as somebody who flexes his status like that much. This is the first I've really heard of him like pulling some strings like on a level that I would hear about, and it just seemed to be kind of patiently waited for something that was actually worth flexing on. Because there's like any number of things that you could
Yeah.
do. If you have um, $100 million deal with Spotify and huge audience, there's like all sorts of things that you could do with your influence, and choosing to do that is pretty solid.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Mm. Well, should we get into some spiritual stuff?
Sure, I'm game.
More spiritual stuff? Okay. Well, I found a couple of badass quotes this week. One of them, well, actually two. I got two by Bruce Lee. Okay. So the first one is someone asked Bruce Lee, what is the most important thing one can learn? And he said, to know yourself. Because once you know yourself, you can't be controlled by fear or other people's opinion.
Hmm.
This guy, fucking legend, man.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of is the true grind. You know.
Mm, well said. Then another one, he said, someone asked him how you find peace. And he says, you don't find peace. You choose it by what you ignore, by what you release, by what you stop giving energy to. That's the shift.
Right. Because it's not the decision isn't by like stumbling upon something in the external. It's a conscious decision from within.
Yeah, yeah, you know, what you're holding on to, um we don't realize the way that we're iron gripping the universe with our beliefs and saying, no, it has to be this way. And it's funny, you know, looking at Eckhart Tolle's message to the world, there is only now, how often our brain or the inner commentary, the mental conversation is trying to point to the way things have happened in the past or point to the things that have happened in the past and trying to bring it up again in the now. And it's like everything that's happened, all of the people, all the circumstances, they're all gone. They're not here, you know? Like none of the things that bother us, keep us up at night or wake us up at night, none of them are here now. We're doing a whole bunch of remembering and not a whole lot of living, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. All right, and then I have a bunch of notes. This is from the last 2 weeks of my personal things that I thought were noteworthy. So this one says, the same voice that chooses to play World of Warcraft is the same one that says salvation will only be found through not playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got here. The ego is such a terrible master. It takes something beautiful, such as skill, and turns it into a reason to look down on others. It takes a perfect opportunity to be grateful and joyful and turns it into an opportunity to complain, suggesting that others should have more skill too. The
Oh.
ego always turns our attention towards what is not. And the now, sorry, one second. Um, the now always turns our attention towards what is. And with this next part, this is kind of touching on something that um has been kind of like, you know how Morpheus says to Neo, there's a question that's been nagging at you like a splinter in your mind,
Yeah.
and he says, what is the matrix, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been something nagging at me, and that's this idea of existence as God. So like we exist, right? There's something here that is going through this play, so to speak. And it's funny because all of the commentary of the mind, it can do so much damage. The mind is such a powerful force. but there's one thing it cannot touch. Like it can touch basically everything, seemingly, but there's one thing it can't touch, and that's the fact that you and I exist. And the alien channelers have been suggesting that this one point alone proves that you and I are unconditionally loved and supported as much as any being in the universe, even Jesus, even Buddha. Just the fact that we exist. And I've been reflecting on my time studying the Bible and really fighting to understand what the Bible's message was in in an exclusive way. And what I had come up with by myself after reading for many thousands of hours was that grace was the only defensible position in the Bible. But what I really meant by grace was that unconditional love, or sorry, conditional love is not love at all,
Right.
right? So so what I was hitting on is this unconditional nature of God. The fact that humans seem to always be conditional, but God, it seemed to me, couldn't be. Like he, she, whatever, needed to transcend this conditional nature somehow. And so this next note kind of touches on this idea that existence actually proves something, that the mind can attack every position. You know, like one day I can be like, oh, I'm so good at StarCraft. I'm so happy. Yay, whatever. And then the mind can turn on me in an instant. One game, 1 week, one night, 1 minute. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't even drone that fucking base. I'm so shitty. The mind can attack all these things, you know, or you can think you're so good at dealing with things at work and then you say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing and it haunts you and it haunts you and it haunts you. And 10 years later, you still remember the look on their face when you said or did XYZ. But the mind can't attack existence. Existence stays. And it doesn't matter if you win or you lose or you're high or you low or whatever,
Yeah.
existence is here to stay.
Right.
It's unconditional, right? And so that's the point of this next part. And then so I wrote, existence is God itself. Non-existence is not real at all and never was. It is a phantom imagination, a byproduct of the mind trying to control things outside of itself. But there is no outside. All is one thing, and it always has been.
Yeah. That's what it seems to be going on. Yeah.
Mm, word. Um, and so also I should add the last 2 weeks I haven't touched weed except to go to sleep. So and that's occasionally, not every day. Before these last 2 weeks, weed was a little bit like a superpower. Like for me, I felt a little bit alienated from like God and existence. Like I felt like I wasn't quite one with everything
Mm-hmm.
unless I would like smoke weed a lot of the time. Not maybe not all the time, like not enough to generalize, but I was definitely leaning on it. And then these last couple weeks I've been sick and I haven't been interested in smoking just being sick.
Right.
Um but I'm really starting to feel the presence of the awareness that I've been trying to cultivate even without the weed, you know, which is exciting because ultimately, as I've told you this before, Sean, like my goal is to um not need to smoke weed but to be high all the time, like in that state. And which for me is a surrendered state, basically a relaxed state, you know, where you're okay with what is, you're neutral, you know.
Right.
And the idea behind that is when you're neutral, you have the ability to try your best without any of the downsides of expectation, worry, anxiety, things like that. So um all these notes are from a sober place, but I'm excited that when I wrote them down, at least they made a lot of sense, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have wrote them down. Um, so it's exciting. That's just on a personal note, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's sort of like, a positive drug experience is sort of like getting a demo for the game. You don't actually have it. You're just testing it out. Um,
Yeah. Well said. That's been exactly my experience too. It does feel like a demo. Yeah. Like you get it, you get the
and
demo
some
and you're
people, and just
messing around.
and the way the gamers are, like sometimes gamers get really hot on a demo. I've seen it numerous times. People are like, I played that demo for 10 hours, same level over and over again. And you can do the same thing with getting high. You can just play that first level over and over again. But it's funny.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I see the two things. It's like, first of all, like everybody reacts to everything differently, and then um, so one person's lean is another person's worst nightmare. But and then the
Mm.
other what was the second thing? Um, I do think that generally anything that is kind of like anything that you take to alter is can be beneficial in more like a more conscious focused decision. But as soon as anything becomes compulsory, whether it's a drug or a game or anything, it very quickly devolves into being something negative.
I couldn't agree more, Sean. I think you worded that perfectly. Compulsory is exactly the ruler by which I measure what is good and what is bad. Like, is it
Mm-hmm.
compulsory or not?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. If it's out of freedom, that's one thing. If it's compulsory, it's totally different.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Very good. Anything else before I move on to the next one?
Nope.
Okay. If you feel you have lost your power to feel disconnected from the soul, spirit, or all that is, it is a terrifying feeling, and we seek to numb that feeling with addictions. We might as well call distractions a fetish.
Sure.
But these belong to the personality, which is a construct of believing thoughts and attending to them as if they were us. And then, um, therefore, the only step is to decrease attachment to thoughts, see that thoughts were only a dream, and then be here now in the present moment, which is something that is actually true and actually exists as opposed to thoughts. And the only comment I have on this one is that I saw a video this week where somebody said, when you say give up the ego, the natural response is to say, well, that's extremely difficult. And he said it's not extremely difficult because the ego doesn't exist. The ego is a pattern. The ego is a pattern of attention. It's just the habitual tuning in to ego FM. That's all it is. It's just a habit. you know
Yeah.
it's just a habit of I wake up, I listen to thoughts, I do what they say, I go to bed, I wake up, I listen to thoughts.
Yeah.
um yeah, so anyways, yeah, that's that. It really can't be hard to be who you are. It's only hard because we've like been ingrained in our habits so often. And it makes me think a little bit of that line by Robert, I think it's Robert Frost, where he says, I've taken the road less traveled and it's made all the difference.
Yeah, yeah, he did say that.
And and for sure I thought that he was looking down on others when he said that, because when I read it, I was 15 and I was looking down on others. So of course I projected that onto him. But I don't think now, when I was thinking about it when I was writing some of this stuff down, and I was like, I don't think he was talking about others at all. Like, I don't think he was commenting on what others are doing at all when he said that. I think he was saying, I ended up taking the road that I haven't traveled before. You
Right.
know, I retraced my steps and retraced my steps and retraced my steps and found it caused me only pain. And then one day I woke up and said, I'm going to go a different way. And
Yeah.
that has made all the difference. So
Yeah.
that was my
Big difference.
revelation on that line.
Big difference.
Big difference.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like back to the Matrix. You've been down that road, Neo. You know where it goes.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that was pretty cool. Um, a pretty cool revelation there about his line. Okay. What else? Okay, and then this one is kind of similar, I think. The only reason not to do certain things is that all actions have momentum, and actions in one area of your life affect the action of your life. Hence the fact that we are actually being, but we think of ourselves. Oh, sorry. Hence the fact that we are actually one being, but we think of ourselves as essentially schizos. Momentum is the reason not to do bad things, because there is no good or bad, or right or wrong, but simply all actions have consequences. So if you do not want the consequences of pushing your momentum in certain directions, then you should not do the activities that lead down that pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this simply has to do with consciously choosing the outcomes that you prefer. And I think what happens when we are identified with thoughts, we we end up identifying as certain like desires. You know, we're desiring this, we're desiring that. But then the desire goes away. So
And also,
when
you
you
know, at that initial like decision point, you know, usually very much wanting to ignore consequences.
Well, that's a great point too. Yeah, you almost you consciously want to not think about the consequences, right? Because you're blinded by the desire of it, right?
Right.
So yeah, like, you, yeah, at some point during the day you're not horny, and then you see a woman, and now it's a different story. And then if you see the potential to hook up with that woman, now it's a different story. But the second you come, if you're a guy, you're not so much interested in that anymore. And
Right.
you'll very quickly watch your mind start generating new thoughts about, how do I get away? How do I not get in trouble? How do I
Plugging
spin
in,
this for my
yeah,
advantage now?
yeah. Shift the
So
goalposts. Shift the goalposts.
it's, yeah, shifting the goalposts, but it's also looking at how the mind divides the self against the self, as if it wasn't you that wanted her, as if it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't you that propositioned her, as if it wasn't you that wanted to come really bad. Like when it was, and now it's a different facet of you, maybe. Um, but these actions have momentum, right? And they turn the self against the self by seeking to try to manipulate what's here into a seemingly better circumstance. And they're doing that constantly. So when they shift the goalpost, yeah, that's a big 180. First, all the willpower was devoted towards getting the girl to do this. And now it's a totally different goal. And now it's getting her to leave, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of that joke that a hooker isn't paid for sex; she's paid to leave afterwards.
Right.
And it's like, it's a joke, but it's here for a reason, and it's because the mind for the masculine ego, it's well, it's very quick to do a 180. I can't tell you how many times I've been very serious about thoughts and how quickly they turn on you. They could want something for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and in a moment now they want the exact opposite,
Yeah.
and now you have to deal with this. And the stress and the suffering is very high. And last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I brought up Alice in Wonderland. And in the past couple weeks, one more example that came to mind about Alice in Wonderland is the Queen of Hearts is always executing everybody. So she's saying, off with their head. And she's commanding her card soldiers to escort the people and like imprison them, waiting to be whatever you call them, decapitated or whatever.
Yep.
Like, but it never happens though, because what happens in the Alice in Wonderland books is that she gets distracted, and when she leaves the premises and or gets distracted or changes moods, everybody around the queen kind of like covers up the mess and goes, okay, no, 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 everybody back to their places,
Yeah.
like, so it never happens. Always ordering people to be executed. Nobody ever gets executed. So if you were in that state, how calm you could be if you could remember that no one actually ever gets executed, versus if
Mm-hmm.
you're believing the what your eyes would tell you. And I bring this up because this is our dream state. Every night we go to bed and the thoughts, they control us and they cause us to respond because we tend to believe that they're true.
Right.
How calm you could be if you knew, or if you could remember no one gets executed, versus how stressed you're going to be if you actually think your head's going to get cut off
Yeah.
every time she has a whim, and a rage outburst.
I would say greater than 90% of the time, I'm in the believe absolutely everything that's happening in a dream, no matter how absurd it is, and generally it's very stressful.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm very much taken by the winds of the dream.
It's a
It's
very
very
lucky critical when I'm aware, and that's generally about the time I get booted. The
and
jig is up.
you gotta realize at some point, at least for us extreme people, Sean and I, you gotta realize at some point the dream state is mirroring the waking state. If you play Diablo all day,
Oh yeah.
fucking, you are dreaming about demons. Like,
Yes.
you are. I don't know.
That's
Like,
yep.
like that's just what's gonna happen. If you're playing poker all day, you're fucking dreaming about poker.
I'll tell you one of the
Like, it's
worst
happening.
ones ever. And this is why I would say like I generally don't dream about work that much, but I would say um, when I was a waiter, I used to dream about work every night, and it was always the same thing. I couldn't keep up. And so I think that was probably the most stressful job I've ever had, just using that as a litmus test. Um,
Mm.
and it's weird because I didn't feel like it was, in like while I was awake, but I bet it was, just more sly. Like if someone was to ask me, I would say, "Oh, it's the one with the worst boss." Or it's the one where I don't get along with my coworkers, and it's like maybe, or it's the one that won't let you sleep.
Mm.
you
Wow.
know, so shout out to waiters because I can't really handle it.
Nice. I'm all down for shout outs. That's great. Good shit. Good shit.
Yeah.
um
Speaking of waiters, there's a I'm actually excited about a movie for once in a long time. Uh, Theo Vaughn and David Spade made a movie called Bus Boys. The premise is, I guess, a little bit sort of like Waiting that we had with Ryan Reynolds, and
Okay.
yeah, they're trying this crazy concept where you make a comedy movie with a bunch of funny people. Hasn't really been done in a while.
Uh,
So it's got like do you watch Kill Tony at all? I don't know how much you're into comedy, but you watch Kill Tony at all?
no.
So the Bus Boys movie has a bunch of the Kill Tony people. So essentially, um, I'll give you the quick elevator speech. Kill Tony is like the quintessential comedy show nowadays. Um, Very much like the Big League. And this guy had this great idea for a podcast. He would combine like an open mic with professional comedians, like taking turns. So usually you have like either an open mic or like a scheduled comedy concert, where there's an opener, maybe a middle guy, and a closer. But this guy was like, what if you actually just mixed like the guy who just started yesterday with like people that have been doing it for decades? And then it's sort of like a trial by fire because the professionals generally critique or roast, varying levels of kindness or meanness depending on the person. But they basically critique slash interview every single one of the open mic people. And um, so it's kind of crazy, you know. It's like a discovery system, It's like it's fine. It's because it's basically like the only open mic where like millions of people watch it. So it's kind of interesting. I don't watch every episode. I kind of pick and choose based on like who's gonna kind of co-host it, but it's for sure much higher quality than the old standard, which was Saturday Night Live, right?
Hmm.
So, and it's fun, it's fun to see because you don't know who you're gonna get. It's just random polls, so it could be someone that just completely bombs, or it could be like a no-namer that's actually a genius. So, kind of interesting, but yeah, I'm gonna go.
But back to why you brought it up, though.
Yeah, I brought it up because a bunch of those people are going to be in the movie, and I'm excited to see a comedy movie for the first time. I can't even remember the last time I went to see a comedy movie in the movie theater. Shit, it was probably like The Hangover? I don't know. That was a long time
Yeah.
ago. Don't,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I enjoy comedy. I wish that there was comedy in New England. I mean, I suppose there's Boston, but you know, Boston's, a bear. So, I just,
Boston's a bear.
yeah, what I mean is that, like, it's difficult to navigate. Um, I also think, me personally, I don't jive with the culture super well. Even though I'm from New England, I don't have that same sort of, I don't have an attitude that's complementary to Boston. I fare a lot better in the South or the Midwest cities. They're a little bit more
Mm.
on my wavelength. I just think that just in general, I mean, all cities are a little extreme in their own way, but I really
Yeah.
think that like New York and Boston, they're just more rude. I think that they're just generally more negative, and I think that that's kind of what gets me is I'm generally a bit more optimistic than they're prepared for.
I actually have a theory that the rudeness pertains to the population because it becomes like essentially like a coping skill to deal with the numbers. I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's also the cold weather. But I don't know. Like as soon as I say that, though, I'm like, I find people in Chicago and Detroit to be far more friendly than New York and Boston and Philadelphia.
Is that what's the size of Chicago comparatively?
I think Chicago might be what fourth biggest city, fifth. Um,
Okay, so it's like bigger than Boston.
yeah.
There's also I don't know if this is like relates to, but there's also that situation where like when your job sucks, you often work with a lot of really cool people, but if your job is easy, you often work with a lot of shitty people. So there's also that
Mm,
scenario where like, we've talked a little bit about like Chicago being like this like it's like a really hardcore place. And so people end up having to be cool.
yeah.
Almost
Okay, so
like
it's
I don't know
third.
if
It's
those
it's third
those two theories
biggest. It
balance
goes
themselves enough.
it goes New York, L.A., Chicago.
Mm.
Yeah.
New York, LA,
I
Chicago.
thought Atlanta was third. Dude, Atlanta's not even top 10. That's crazy to me. I thought Atlanta was massive.
Oh, so you were saying Chicago because of the cold weather thing, right? Because it's cold in Boston and it's cold in Chicago.
Yeah, but then I was like, no, it's not. It can't really be the cold weather because, yeah, that would kind of rule out my experience with
Mm,
Chicago and Detroit. Um,
gotcha.
I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what it is about New York and Boston. They're like two sides of the same coin, you know. Yankees, Red Sox. They're more or less the same. Um,
That makes sense to me.
yeah, they're like they're
You,
like very competitive brothers. You know,
yeah.
one's way bigger than the other, but the other one makes up for it in scrappiness. Um, yeah,
Oh,
it takes a lot to get me to go to Boston. I also heard that it's rank one most difficult city in America to drive in, so I think that's part of like what keeps me off of it. Um, if
I
I could,
agree with that for sure.
Yeah, if I could come up with a better method of kind of mass transporting, but then it would also just take that much longer to get in or get out. So, um, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Whereas, like, yeah, like Atlanta, I'm like, I lived like about the same distance, like an hour and a half. But if it was like, oh, there's something going on in Atlanta on Friday, I would just like pop in there, pop out. Just didn't seem
Mm.
like, parking's not really like a problem. Traffic's not really super bad. Um, so I don't know. They just they make it difficult. So there is comedy down in Boston, but you have to fight uphill both ways to get to it. And I guess what I mean is I wish that there was like easy access to comedy around here.
I'm surprised that that's not a thing in Keene, like in Manchester it was
Yeah, it's like
on some level.
very very rare. Um, there isn't like regular
Hmm.
open mics or them billing anybody of any sort of repute. Um, the casino club gets like people sometimes, but like never anyone I've ever heard of, and I know most of the names. Um, so it's an issue of billing, like because it is a college town. You could sell out your venues. It's not really a problem, but like they have the Colonial Theater on Main Street as well, and they just whoever's in charge of booking that, like they just serially like just book cover bands. Like, oh, this band's just gonna play Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and like all the boomers just buy all the tickets and watch that, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but like, what about people that are playing new music, playing their own music? They just, they have this really great. It's a beautiful theater. I don't know if you ever went to it, and
No.
it's just whoever's in charge of billing, it just has their head in the clouds. Just taking the path of
Hmm.
least resistance, I guess. But I just don't know. I'm like, there's venues, and they just kind of have them utilized at the lowest level.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've turned the going to shows way down lately. Like I said, I planned on kind of being in a holding pattern at least for a year. And I did make that trek out to Chicago, but that was on the friend's dime, summoned. But
Yeah.
I haven't actually picked anything out for myself, which it's more normal for me to do like one or two a month, and so I've just been cold turkey more or less, and but it's good. It's good. The uh, the money is stacking. All I have to do is sit there and wait for it.
Yeah. It's on cooldown or it's not.
It's on cooldown or it's not. Yeah. So the other thing is coming up second half of the year we got robots, and I don't know how open, like what the supply demand curve is going to look like for that, but you know one thing I would like to do is if possible be an early adopter, um, just so I can kind of learn about it, and it's something I want to share, you know share my
Yeah.
experience, kind of be a beta tester. um, Really, people ask me at work, they're like, well, what are you going to use it for? I'm like, first things first, I need a mailroom clerk. I need a mailroom clerk. If you saw the freaking piles that I have, man, my mail processing is pretty abysmal. Um, if it just did that, it'd be worth the price of admission.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is, man, but I'm like deathly afraid of processing mail.
Hmm.
It's always
Phobia,
been it's always been
perhaps.
yeah, it's always been that way too. Usually like the ways that I would like get around on it is just get, talk about leaning into things. I just get like high to the point where, it just drowns it out, and then, process it in whatever way I can
Hmm.
in such a state, but yeah. If you if you come to my house and you see a really gross pile of mail, you'll know that I've been very sober for a long time. You'd think,
your
"Oh,
your
wow."
your uh your 6 month sobriety chip is a picture of your living room counter. Like, look,
Yeah,
as you can see.
as you can see. It's actually funny. It's like my house is like very fucking clean uh, in periods where I'm very not sober, and it's very inverted. Like you'd think you come over to someone's house and
Hmm.
it's all a mess. You're like, oh, this guy must be just wasted all the time. And it's like right now, like my house is pretty fucking disheveled, and I've just been like pretty damn sober, like
Hmm.
99% for a while, and it's like, oh, it shows. Uh, cause
I get that. I get that.
yeah, cause it's like, when I'm on a tear, I don't watch anything, I don't play games, I just like listen to music and clean. That's all I do really. Maybe talk, you
Yeah.
know. I'll talk. I can talk, listen to music, or clean, and so there's all kinds of time for it, and but yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like, no, witness my my dysfunction. Ugh. So that's why, I've always grappled back and forth where, like, in my mind, I want it to be binary, where I'm like, well, it would just be better if I was just fucked up all the time. Or then, kind of like the winning thing. Then I'll bounce back and be like, no, the answer is to actually be sober 100% of the time. And then finally, I just realized I'm like, the reason why you ping pong back and forth is because they both have pros and cons. It's
Yes.
literally just a
Yes.
different mode. You know, it's
Yeah,
almost
and
like
if you think about it too,
it's
like
like playing a different class. Like, well, if I play this, I get this, this, and this. But if I play this, I get this, this, and
yeah,
this. But I have to give up that.
yeah, it kind of reminds me of I mean, Alan Watts is kind of like pointing to it, but he says if you're trying to win one over against life, it just shows that you don't realize that you are life. And that's a very elusive like commentary, but when we play when we play a game, we tend to, at least if we're doing it our way, we tend to want to win. And then when we come up with a strategy to not game, it's also to win. It's just winning in different ways, like
Yep.
it is switching classes by trying to log off because of the way we're doing it, right? And I wish there was a clean answer because but it's like you said, they're two sides of the same coin, even though you were talking about Boston and New York. But it's
Yeah.
so true. Like like it's just so fucking true. Like a lot of times we're battling um on the same terrain. It's over the same stuff. Like I play life exactly the same as I play WoW, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's literally no different, it's just
Yeah. The
one's
way you do
one's
one thing is the way you do everything.
ooh, dude, it hits so hard. shout out to shout out to the G who said that, man. That dude's a genius.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that's why, um, that's why it pays so heavily back to, what Bruce Lee was saying, um, knowing yourself. That was sort of like I realized a couple of years ago, the spending some time by yourself without distraction, um, sort of cleaning your room mentally pays big dividends. And because once you kind of clean up in there, you're kind of just it affects everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. Really does. Well, let me I've been doing a little housework. Do you want to take it for a bit or you want me to keep reading? What do you think?
Um, Keep reading.
Okay. Let me drop some hand sanitizer and I will hit it again. Maybe I want to run something to the dumpster, so maybe I'll give the shadow work question and then we can talk about that for a little bit.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Let me grab my pen.
Okay.
There it is. What you got?
Okay. So this one is something that can be applied to any circumstance, but specifically those that cause us problems or trouble. Because usually, when life causes us problems, physical pain, financial pain, social pain, existential pain, whatever, that's usually when we're open to learning. So it's not that we couldn't learn otherwise when we're comfortable, but usually we're not going to choose to, we're not going to be open to it. So this applies to any circumstance that is causing some dysregulation for us, right? So the question is, if I was an ascended master, who set up these particular circumstances beforehand to learn from, what might the lesson or lessons be?
If I was an ascended master who set up these circumstances,
Beforehand to learn from, what might the lessons be? So in this
stances
one, yeah, in
before.
this one, we're being asked to get out of our first person view and take a more third person view, get in touch with a more transcendent part of ourselves and
Yeah.
almost answer our own questions. What might the lessons that life is trying to teach me be? And this is really valuable because if we learn our lesson, the world stops doing those things to us. All the perceived victimhood is actually a teacher in disguise. Um, and so this question is asking us to kind of dig deep and answer our own problem, so to speak. Um, Almost like in StarCraft, you're asked to make probes and pylons, or drones and overlords, or SCVs and supply depots. And you're asked to focus on that throughout the match. If you focus on that, you essentially win most of your games. But the
Mm-hmm.
distractions are always there, right? And in this life, we have a tendency, because of the way our conscious mind scans the reality, there's a tendency to focus on the distractions or the problems. And so this question is saying, if we ignore the sort of drama side of it, what is this situation, X situation, trying to teach us? Uh, so what do you got on that, Mr. Sean? Any reaction, any big reactions from you the last
Um,
6 months, or any troublesome?
I would say, um, for sure, um, the first thing that comes to mind is humility,
Mm,
which I kind of think of as like the opposite of pride
mm-hmm,
generally. Um, and um, I would say I would say another lesson would be that um, don't be so quick to pass judgment. You know, it,
mm,
the in depend. As soon as I say one thing, I'm like I'm about to counter it, but I'm like because some things that you think are simple are actually really complicated, and then other things that you think are complicated are actually really simple upon closer
mm,
inspection.
So what is the situation that has sort of caused some dysregulation out of you that has led to these, like, this idea of humility or less judgment being a better path? Like,
Yeah,
what are some of the
just
difficulties that brought this?
I would say generally just sort of thinking that you know how something is going to go for sure, and then placing all your eggs in that basket. Um, I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on. I guess I'd have to. I'm trying to bundle everything together, but Maybe I need to
Mm.
go more piecemeal.
Well, like for starters, like, what's the last thing that was a sort of bump in the road for you or a bump in the night? Like, what's the last thing that you were like frustrated by or you saw an emotional reaction in yourself towards?
I would say um, the process of trying to make peace with the transition to a non nomadic lifestyle, I would say was the biggest bump in recent history, which I feel like I'm
Mm.
more or less on the other side of. But I think I grappled for oh almost 2 years with the idea of just working the same job, living in the same place, which is what most people do generally. But I hadn't done it um, in my entire life, so um, it's probably something that a lot of people have to go through. Usually, either when they leave high school or get out of college. But I had to kind of go through that process, delayed until now.
Mm.
And just generally coming around to the idea that it's okay, you know, um, it's fine, and also knowing that if it really wasn't fine, I would have, I could, I at any time I was free to get up and get on the road. It's sort of like I tricked
Yeah.
myself into thinking that I trapped myself, but there wasn't actually anything trapping me.
Yeah. So, and so is that the is what did that situation like, what did that situation like what do you think was the lesson behind that you were trying to teach yourself? Because the idea is that we set up this life on purpose and that we chose
Mm-hmm.
this time period on purpose because it's so, every century is so different, um
Right.
like, so the idea is that if we put these circumstances in our own way on purpose, what might we've been what might our higher selves been trying to teach our lower selves? What might the lesson be behind that? Like, obviously, sense of adventure and thrill seeking have been part of your life, like,
Right.
you call it nomadic spirit, but um that was a big part of your life. The
Right.
idea that, like, I got to keep moving, you
Mm-hmm.
almost like maybe that term, and I'm just thinking here, I'm brainstorming because I don't know the answer, but maybe the idea of physically moving was your way of feeling like you were in motion,
Yeah. Like
like
make it
like
progression.
last week or 2 weeks ago you said, yeah, last week or 2 weeks ago you said, I said what's been up, and you said, well, just playing the rests, and
Mm-hmm.
like that's been really hard for me the past probably a long time, like I told you I was going to take a couple days and think about what games I wanted to play. I couldn't stop moving. So I didn't play the rest, but I was thinking about that like, yeah, I got to learn to play the rest, maybe that's something that you learned through that struggle, is like you were moving as a way of just always having something on your plate, oh,
Right.
it's next outage, oh, there's new people, oh, there's new jobs, oh, there's new renting, oh, there's new money,
Yeah.
new connections, and then it's like learning to play the rest, learning to stop, quote unquote, moving,
Right.
uh, just a thought, but
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. And I think part of that's comes with age. I think that people tend to um, slow down a little bit on like the moving around, the restlessness. Um, but I think it's this coming up here has been good to like revisit the area just from like a new lens, but um, at least now, not that this was even coming to me, but at least now, like if I wind up somewhere else, I won't have this. I can scratch it off the list of like, you know, oftentimes people have this like gnawing feeling that they need to move back home, but like now coming back to this area, you know, 10, 15 years later, um, it I know that it's not going to be my final destination, you know. Um, so I can at least scratch that off, you know, so I won't make it to like say 40 or 50 and be like, man, I should really move back to Vermont, you know. Um, but
Ooh,
it has been good for a lot of learning.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and I think I don't know. I haven't really thought about this a lot, but I guess just trying to brainstorm here. I think my one of the biggest lessons of my last like 25 years is at least is that there's no need to change what is. Um, things are working perfectly, and dealing with this last bout of sickness, which is always hard for me, physical sickness. It's like one of the things I love to obsess about and imagine I have control over is like um, eating food, you know, like how much food I'm eating and what I'm eating. And I love to play different games of like, I'm only going to eat this or I'm only going to do that. And I get so obsessed with it that I often probably make myself sick. And I'm reminded of that quote, like, where you and your buddies are sitting at one place and someone says, let's go to this other place.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, yeah, but then we would just still be here, except we'd be somewhere else.
Yeah, where we are
And
now, but at a pizza place.
yeah, and this, this is kind of like a lifelong lesson for me. And if I'm not mistaken, that insight was drug induced. But I've told you before that I think that all wisdom should be measured against that comment. Like, are we just trying to get somewhere else in life just to be somewhere else?
Yeah,
Because I'm really starting to digest the fact that egos are unhappy. And so it doesn't really matter what situation you put them in. They're just going to be unhappy but somewhere else or in a different position. And so if I had to answer the question off the cuff, I would think that it's starting to just make peace with the fact that an ego is a perspective that's based off of the idea of being separate. It's based off the idea of drawing lines in the sand and saying, well, this is me and that's you. And as I see your character name across the screen, right? But
mm-hmm.
it's this illusion that like somehow we're different and that everything is different. And it's, I saw a baby today, and dogs are reminders of this too. You stare at a baby's eyes or a dog's eyes, and it's almost very lucid compared to the frantic nature of the mind. The human adult is doing things and thinking things and scheming things and kicking themselves for not doing things. And you look at a baby or a dog, and they're just here. They're just right now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
No yesterday, no tomorrow. And it's the most incredible thing to see a baby or a dog get hurt or walk around with pain. Um, Maybe not so much babies, but dogs. Oh my God, the fucking pain tolerance. They don't obsess about anything. If they have chronic back pain or two legs or one leg or three legs or whatever, or bum joints, they don't ever whine about it. Not once, you know? Like it's just what it is.
Right.
Um Very difficult though to get there as an adult. Maybe it's a Gemini thing or an Enneagram investigator type thing or whatever, but very difficult to just let everything go like a stream, you know? Um, there isn't anything that's bothering you that isn't uncommon to mankind. There isn't anything that's bothering you today that won't be gone very soon, you know? And yet we just have this way about us of like, mm, being so ready to complain, so ready to tell stories, you know, um, so ready to tell somebody, and I can't really give a better example other than if you just observe people's conversation. Like I went to a union meeting a couple days ago, yeah,
What's
maybe
a
like
what's a
5 days
union
ago,
meeting?
and like
What is a union meeting?
it's like mm, so like I guess workers at some point in time in certain disciplines in certain areas decided to unionize. So
Oh,
like
oh, like a
where
workers
you're
union. Yeah,
from,
yeah, yeah.
oh, yeah, workers union, yeah. So like here that looked like they were renegotiating, the union was renegotiating the security contract with one of my employers. And so that means it's time to talk about benefits and time to talk about compensation and all that stuff. So the union, like, it's kind of interesting how it works. They gather um to sort of show their ability to be one unit, you know, union, if you will. They gather at the event where they're going to negotiate the contract. But I go there and it's like new people, new this, new that, and it seems like all anybody wants to talk about is complaining. And it was a very interesting experience for me, for one that doesn't socialize too much, but just to see how many stories people have locked and loaded,
Yeah.
ready to complain, you know, just on the shelf, ready to go. Um, very just so many stories in the oven, just ready to serve. um,
Yeah.
Under the heat lamp, ready to go. I don't know how to say it. It just shows where the human consciousness is at, you know. So um just trying to get to a place where I'm not carrying the baggage of every fucking sad thing that I, you know, think has happened to me or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think sickness is a big part of that, you know, like dealing with the ups and downs of the mind, dealing with the highs and lows of the mind, and trying to get back to union within yourself, trying to get back to the place of, because this happens to me. I mean, this is a daily struggle where I'm following my breath, I'm following my breath, I'm following my breath, and I'm having a great day so long as I'm following my breath. But then something will happen and all of a sudden it's like the in the mind the clouds come, and it's so negative, the commentary. It's like, this sucks and it's always like this and it's always going to be like this and you're never going to be happy and you're never going to be healthy, like just very very negative stuff.
Hmm.
And to me this is like, if you know, if you really want to get super critical of the things that are going through my head, I've had like neck pain for like, I don't know, more or less like 2 years. And there was one day where I was like thinking really clearly, like just really, I don't know how else to say it, like almost like channeling wisdom rather than my ego, right? And when I'm channeling and in that space, you can like feel the vibration. It's like higher, it's like it's more sober, it's more clear thinking, it's more everything. It's more uh, it's neutral. Honestly, like it's just the voice of wisdom is neutral. The voice of the ego is never neutral. It's always
Right.
us focused and story focused and everything. And the voice comes, the kind of clear channeling voice comes through my head and says, "Are you just complaining about having a human neck?" Like, here I am going like, "Oh, my neck, my neck, my neck," and it's like, like the voice, like which you could call the voice of God, in my opinion. It's kind of like, what are we talking about here? Like, are you just you're just sad that you have a body that like gets sore and gets tired? Like, is that what? But it's so funny because we come up with these stories and they all serve a purpose. Thoughts offer rewards to us, and when we choose to tap into them, we're paying the price and getting the reward of the thought that comes. So
Mm-hmm.
this guy Joe Dispenza, he is a very interesting being. Has quite a few books out on this type of thing, but he I saw him in a clip and he said it's very possible we are purposefully subjecting ourselves to stressors to justify our addictions.
Yeah.
And I'm going to repeat that. It's because it's fucking huge, this idea. It's very possible that we are subconsciously attracting into our experience stressors in order to justify our addictions. So it's like
Oh yeah.
the subconscious mind knows that as long as I craft a certain type of story, I'll be able to feel comfortable isolating, logging on to WoW, for instance. It's like because it all feeds on itself. So there's a desire. The ego, like I said, is not neutral. There's a desire to have a sad story, and it's the psychology of this is very deep. I can't go into all of it, but I'll just say very simply, like, if you're complaining publicly, you are not risking making others feel jealous of you, and you're sort of setting a certain tone that you're not going to be rejected. It's like it's almost like a built-in thing, kind of like how cats are scared of like ropes or like cucumbers. They like think they're snakes. It's like built into their biology, their DNA. There's
Yeah.
something about the human DNA that knows it's more socially acceptable to complain than it is to talk about how blessed you are. And we're like
Right. That's
tapping
so
into this
true.
human trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the more the more normal a conversation is, the more it's filled with complaints.
Yeah. Oh man, I slept terribly. Oh man, this hurts. You know, it's just very socially acceptable to talk like that. And yeah, so just looking at the ways that we yeah, looking at the ways that we craft these stories, but these stories they all have a purpose. Everything we do has a purpose. If we didn't think on some level it had a purpose, we just wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
you know. So we do have all of these sob stories locked and loaded, and these complaints, and I'm not trying to say like this is real. Like, I'm not trying to say humans are in a bad spot, because I think generationally, Sean, you and I have talked about this. Um, it seems like the souls that are coming in now they're ready to let the past go. We
Mm-hmm.
are more on the cusp of like the in between generation where we're like,
Yeah.
we're
True.
struggling through the letting it go. But as soon as we let the past go fully, this is going to be a different world. Like, and it's already becoming
Surely.
that, but it
Surely.
will very quickly
One of
shift.
the
Like,
hardest
yeah.
hitting lines I heard from, any of the sort of social studies content that I watched was when this one guy said to another guy in a podcast, he said, "We're still living in the shadow of World War II.
Mm,
Like this whole operating system is still just World War II. We haven't gotten over it. And I was like, whoa,
I couldn't agree more.
that hit me because I'm like, we weren't even alive for World War II, but we're still, living in the shadow of it, as he said. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, like just like hanging on to it, um, you know,
Yeah.
and and it's because the human life is one length, but like the cultural memory and patterns of society act on a different timeline. Like to a civilization, a century really isn't that long. It's more like a
Yeah.
month. And I'm like, yeah, that's a crazy idea. But afterwards, similar to what you were saying, he was like, it's imperative that like we get beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, not saying, yeah, we're living in the shadow of World War II, and that's a good thing. It was more like kind of like, hey, it's time to wake up, you know, move forward.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's nuts. It just it smacked me.
Yeah. I heard this quote today where this guy Osho, who's a legendary thinker, said, "Don't be so quick to try to teach your children anything because they have virtually everything to teach you and you have virtually nothing to teach them." And I was like, "Bro, like that's some next level shit." But he's right. I think, it's like if you really look at the consciousness of a child versus the consciousness of a programmed adult. And that's why it's changing and it's good, right? Because if you and I were the last generation truly and no children were born after us, the thing is I'd just probably still be talking about this. And it's like, it doesn't really matter if my message is one of change or desiring to change. I'm still bringing up the past, you know? Like, truly, the shift comes for like the trauma of Earth when we stop bringing up the past. Like, just stop
Yeah,
it. Like, not telling stories about how we shouldn't be bringing up the past. Just don't bring it up ever again. um we don't think about race ever again, and I'm not kidding, ever. Like don't talk about how you wish it was different back then. Like, just stop it. Like,
that was
you know
actually something Morgan Freeman said in an interview. They asked him. They said, "In your opinion, um, how do we fight racism?" And Morgan Freeman said, "We stop talking about it, right? Because
mm, mm-hmm.
something dies when um, this is a common theme, like with like media, right? Like it's good press, bad press. Better to have bad press than no press. Like because it's the perpetuation, positive or negative. Um,
Yeah,
but
exactly. and
on
and
that note, it's I get what you're saying, like as far as like where it has to go, but I think that like what's happened specifically around the topic of racism was that it seemed like we just about had it on the way out, like say the 90s into 2000s. um, but the issue was it was sort of brought back, and it was sort of like this thing of like um, how do I put it? It's almost like if I can go there, this is just how my mind thinks of it. Is it's sort of like nuclear bombs, right? It's sort of like no one wants to drop them, but like if you got them, I gotta have them, you know, as like a defense mechanism. And it's sort of like the same thing, right? Like racism, which is just tribalism, right, is a better term I like to use, because
yeah,
it can be you know uh, competition around more things than just race. It could be around intelligence levels, geographical locations, sports teams, whatever. But tribalism
yeah,
arises as a self defense mechanism because it's sort of like to think of it logically, if you're going to be tribalistic and aggressive and competitive and combative, and I'm just going to be me, an individual who wants everybody to, be the same and everyone unity, I'm at a disadvantage now,
Sure.
like strategically. So there's a bunch of people that kind of talk about these like kind of logic puzzles. I don't know if you ever heard like the problem of like the prisoners, like the two prisoners, and it's like a logic puzzle, kind of like the trolley problem. But I think that that's what we've reached, kind of like on a global scale, was that like the West, which is always kind of being the cutting edge on moving ahead, like the West abolished slavery first, and did civil rights and freedoms and da 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 da. And then it's sort of like, but we're at a disadvantage if like you're not also going to do that in good faith. Back to my example of it's like nuclear bombs. It's like, yeah, it's better if everyone just gets rid of the nuclear bombs. But unless everyone's going to get rid of them kind of at the same time, there's this anxiety that comes from giving up like what we think is going to keep us safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, and that's why there's like sort of just like how the Grateful Dead quote, like that people have a fundamental need for adventure and we give that to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like humans have a fundamental need for change because the paths that are so, like, when you walk through snow, it's so much easier to walk on ground that's already treaded, because if you don't, you get snow like in your boots and in your pants, right? It's just
Right.
it's so easy and so natural. And the human brain seems to have a really easy time just doing what it did yesterday. And
Right.
so, like, I just sort of say that like that there's like need for change, and the generations and like the dying of our generation and the generation before us, and the replacing us with the newer generation, and so on and so on, is really needed, because it's like cleansing, you know what I mean? Like it's this, I talked about the greater lesson with my sickness and my last couple weeks possibly being accepting of what is. And one of the things that's common in our culture is to worship youth and wish that we had eternal youth. And I'm playing devil's advocate, I guess, and saying, what if old age and death are here for a reason? But one of the things that came up in myself today is that I was autopiloting, trying to stay young and healthy forever without even thinking about it. Like it never popped into my mind. And when I asked myself today, well, why are you doing that? Because of course, sickness causes you to look at your own frailty, on some level, you're weak or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, well, why are you doing that? Why are you chasing eternal youth? And I was like, I have no fucking idea. Like, I've just been under the blind assumption that it's just better, you know? And I was like, and I just kind of asked myself the question, well, do you want to stay healthy forever? Like, and just be here forever? Like, is that what you want? And I was like, no. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the self awareness to know exactly what I want, but I like, just being real. Like, I work at a job that has no purpose. I just show up, I just pay bills, I live. Um, I don't want to do this forever, you know? Um, if I knew maybe what I did want to do more, I could move towards that. But new beginnings require old endings, right? And so my
Right.
point is I've been living off autopilot of this assumption, like it's just better to just live forever, or set yourself up to potentially live as close to forever as possible. And I was like, man, like we need this change. Like we need to be able to give up the old when we're so we can be so fundamental about perpetuating the old, and that's requiring it requires change. And on that note, I have another note that I turn towards the next note in order, and it kind of comments on this. And so the note says, we don't want to police ourselves, and we don't want to be policed by others. Therefore, it is possible we are fundamentally opposed to learning new things. Like, everybody feels comfortable living a certain amount outside the law, but nobody wants to get fined and nobody wants to change. So
Yeah.
so there's like some fundamental just like discord with just doing anything that's new, and that's in all of us. So um I say that as a compliment to the generation younger than us,
Yeah.
and anticipating their reign as we eventually die off, because like we need the new, in my opinion, as a
Yeah.
being, as a thinking being that is just as apt to following in their own footsteps and doing things the way they've always done it as anybody else. Like, we actually need this. We
Yeah.
need this stuff to change, because like you said, we are living in the shadow of World War II, and in a lot of ways, and
And
in
we
the
and we
shadow
need
of our history.
people to uh, get out there and have 8 kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Essentially, um,
Yeah.
the we've been living in this individualist bubble for far too long, and they the distractions have done a number on us. Missing the whole being fruitful and
Mm,
multiplying, because it seems to be a lot more essential than we thought.
mm,
Um, so shout out to people that are having kids.
mm.
Because that's evolution, and I don't mean like the Darwin kind, but just actual evolution.
Mm, very nice. Well, I think I'm at the end of my notes with this last comment. And I think it's a good one to end on. Um, After, we talk about it as much as needs to be said, of course. The quote is, to be in the flow is to fight furiously, to stay relaxed in every moment, enjoying it to the fullest. It takes tremendous strength and consistency of mind to not imagine that another moment is better than this one. And then I added in a new paragraph, everything comes in its season. What you ask for today will surely come tomorrow. But that does not mean that we should ignore today, for it
Mm-hmm.
is made up of the prayers of yesterday. Um,
So true.
so thank you, bro. So yeah, so it's a relaxation, but it takes a tremendous amount of fighting to stay in that relaxed state. So it's really like a union of both sides of the coin. Like,
Yeah, like
to relax is to
discipline.
stop. Yeah. And in tarot, there's a there's a card that means balance. And somebody said, when talking about that card, they said it's a reminder that to stay balanced requires both tension and intention. So like it's like balance isn't just what happens when you kind of just throw a stick at the wall. Like, it requires there's a there's something that requires strength and discipline, even if the goal is just to relax into this present moment. You know what I mean? It's both. It's both.
Yeah.
Um Jordan, relaxes, but he also, shot his 2003 throws the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Type of thing. He
Right.
relaxes in the game, but like he he hasn't stopped practicing, and that's our dharma, our sardana, our spiritual practice is that, like, yes, the goal is to relax into the now, but there's a lot of fighting that almost needs to take place just to stay on the horse, you know?
Right.
um, yeah. So
So we keep fighting the good fight.
yeah, yeah. And and we keep paying attention, paying attention to the things that matter to us, because that's what autopiloting is an autopilot is just paying attention to that which you've always paid attention to. That's all it is. um so we keep paying attention towards the direction that we want to be moving, and we monitor our attention so that we're continually placing it where we want it to go, because we always get better at that which we practice. And so if we want to be peaceful, we have to practice being peaceful. If we want to relive the same decade that we lived last decade in the future, then that requires no discipline. That's going to happen automatically. But to place our attention where we want to be moving so that change does take place, that's going to require both tension and attention. You know, it's going to require focus. It's going to require consistency of mind, like we talked about a week or 2 weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
That our least consistent stat is our thoughts. It's our mind. It's where we're looking. um, we tend to have this hummingbird attention where we're on one thing and then we're on something else, and we're taking it all very seriously. And this is a strategy of the mind to keep people repeating the same day every day. Groundhog Day is not just a movie, it's a reality for people who don't wake up.
Right. Hmm. It's a big one.
Mm, yeah.
Do you ever feel like you wish you had like like a a, a clear focus, a clear goal, like some of these like historical figures seem to have?
Hmm.
Like Jordan with his hoops, or like Alexander Graham Bell with his light bulb inventions. It's like,
Well, as you say that, what comes to mind is that that's a afterthought. Like, that it's only in hindsight that it looks like everything's coming together towards one major arc. And it's really only in the perspective of an onlooker as well. Like, it's so easy for us, if you just look at our habits, to discredit that which we're strong at, you know, like that which we're very naturally good at. It's so easy to just overlook it and not value it. So it's very
mm-hmm,
possible that Jordan, or you look at Arnold saying in the past 5 years, I don't know exactly when he said it, but he kind of admitted that he was an actor when he was in the public eye. That he said, when I looked at my physique, I never thought I was there. Like I thought, nah, not good enough. Like still look like shit. Um, but I projected a role of confidence because I knew that's what was desired of me, you know, like that's
Yeah.
what the public wanted to see. So you the so like so looking at him from a third person perspective, and in hindsight, of course, because that's the only way you can look at him, um now, is like we say, oh wow, you know, he lived his destiny and he achieved and look at all these great things. But from his perspective, it never felt like that, and it certainly doesn't feel like that now. It's just like he's a fighter, he's a warrior, you know, he's someone
Hmm.
that is like compared to others, he does well. But if you look at that which we naturally do well, we're often the quickest to write that off about ourselves, especially on our bad days. So I
Sure.
guess I
Sure.
guess my thought is just that like it's never going to feel like that in the moment, even if after the fact people would or might say those things about you, you know.
Sure.
Um but I know what you're saying, and I do think it's such a strong desire in ourself, like especially when I catalog my own like will to live, so to speak, that like it's consistently, constantly trying to find purpose. And it kind of consistently says, oh man, if we could just find that purpose, if we could just tap in, then it would all be worth it. And I think that's part of I think that's part of this struggle, is the ego trying to like reunite itself, says, or like recollect itself or recompile itself. It says like, if I could just do one thing so well, then it will all, you know, be worth it. But the problem that I see with that is that when we say well, this is another example of
Loaded
kicking the
term.
can.
Yeah.
It's yeah, well, it's moving the goalpost, because what we specifically mean by well is better than everybody. And
Hmm.
I'm not exaggerating. Like I'm saying this very literally, that like if everybody makes $70,000 and we make 85,000 a year, we'll feel good about ourselves. If everybody makes $60,000, or let me rephrase that actually. If everybody makes 70 and we make 85, we'll feel very good about ourselves in general. And this is very well studied, this exact phenomenon I'm talking about. I'm not making this up.
Oh
If
yeah. No,
if
I've
everybody
seen that before. Yeah.
You've
It's a.
seen this, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you make 100,000 and everybody makes 120, you're gonna feel shitty about yourself.
Yep.
So I'm not being philosophical when I
That's
say
yeah.
like
That's just
this is a
mathematical.
yeah, this is a moving goalpost that the ego tries to set up, and we call it purpose. Um, but it's very integral to how the mind seems to be functioning, like that, like this question of purpose. Um, it's a very good question, or a very good point that you bring up. I I do think it's ultimately illusory, but I will say that even though it's illusory, I don't think it's not important, and I don't think it's not worth looking into. I think it is important for us individually to tap into that which we're truly gifted at and excel at it, but I think it's equally important to realize that like that purpose that we're all searching for is a subjective purpose. It's
Yeah.
not actually the objective purpose.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. That's critical.
Yeah. And so valid, you know what I mean? Like very valid to want to find a subjective purpose, but also probably valid to keep in mind that subjective purpose is not all that is. It's just an aspect of like the human condition, that we need forward momentum, and in order to have forward momentum we have to play into our strengths, we have to play into our genuine sort of passion, you know. And finding that and walking that out and seeing how that plays out is, I think, very important to like living a life that like you're happy when you wake up and you're happy when you go to bed. Like I think that's very important. I don't think it's what the ego makes it out to be. Like I think the hero's journey is a myth that's inside all of our heads, and it's a way for the ego to try to soothe itself from the pain that it experiences and say, well, the pain will all be worth it if I end up being the Michael Jordan of my particular discipline, like that's going to soothe me. I do think it helps us get through, kind of like a nutritious meal, right? Like a nutritious meal and a meal made with love is super important, super valuable, but it's not the end all be all because in 12 hours you're hungry again. So you got to keep it in some amount of perspective, don't sell your kingdom for some steak, like type of thing. Like that's putting it in economics terms, but I think you see what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that like don't think that everything rides on getting one good meal, because very soon you'll need another one, the type of thing. So purpose is, I think, a lot like that. There's probably seasons where we're plugged in and we're tapped in and we're feeling a lot more aligned with our purpose, and then there's probably seasons where we feel more alienated from our purpose, and that's probably a call to get a little more centered, take a little more space for ourselves, be a little bit more outside of the ego's vantage point to try to see things a little more neutrally. And then we kind of join in the fight again. Almost like Warcraft 3, like there's macro and then there's the hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doing all that is part of the game. And I think in the same way, like being a human down here, it's not just about only following your breath and never experiencing anything as a human again, because that is possible, by the way. Like, if you're wondering, like you can transcend all human experience. Like, it's very possible, um, without drugs, even. But that's not the goal. Like, the goal is actually it's to be in heaven and then also to be on earth, and
Yeah.
and unifying that experience, like, because this earth is not the enemy. Like, it's not, like, this isn't like, god, this isn't like this simulation that we're in isn't like God trying to flip an omelet and smashing it on the floor and being like, whoops, I guess I'll call it earth.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big fuck up. At least not like it seems initially. So yeah, like, I do think there's that purpose is a big part of what it means to be a playable character down here. But it's also not the end all be all, because neutrally neutrally experiencing the world is one of the most beautiful things you can experience. And it's probably as beautiful as being fully tapped into your purpose. Like, and by that I mean, like, if you're really tapped into your human experience down here and you're really in the flow, in the zone, relaxed into the moment, like allowing God to work through you, is probably equal to um seeing a vision of the world that realizes everything's perfect. So, like, realizing things are perfect and fully working to make things better are probably a lot more synonymous than
Mm-hmm.
antagonistic to each other.
Right.
But they have different commentary. I sent you a video today, Sean. The
Yeah.
guy
About
starts to say something. Yeah,
yeah. About how
you
does
can you can share.
how does Jesus meditate, and then he sits in
Yeah,
silence, and then he concludes um, just like loving the universe.
yeah, that he loses himself to love, like he
Yeah.
surrenders himself to love. But the part that I'm commenting on is, like, the guy who said that, the Alibaba or whatever his name is, that dude is like, I'm not kidding. He has miracles up the wazoo. Like, he's dead now, and he's been dead for a long time, probably before you and I were born. But like, every person who's ever contacted him raves about how many miracles this guy did. You know, like, this guy was like, he was loaded with them. You know, very powerful dude. But the point is that someone asks him the question. It says, "You said we should meditate like Christ. How did Christ meditate?" The guy opens his mouth to answer the question, right? As you would expect, because it's like, if you know, who can answer except the wisest guy in the room, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he should be the one with the mic, right?
Right.
But he opens his mouth like he's gonna say something, and then he just stops and closes his eyes for a few minutes, becoming incredibly still. And you know what he was doing? He was living by example. He was like, not primarily to be an example. He was just showing them what dying to love looks like. He went silent, he went still, and two tears rolled down his eyes after a few minutes, and then he opens his eyes and answers the question. But the
Right.
point is that, like, even the smartest guy in the room needs to take a beat. That was my point in bringing that up. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like, taking a beat, like, you would think that's for the novice, right? Like, hey, slow your roll, you know, close your mouth, open your ears. But this guy's like, he's the wisest guy probably in the
Mm-hmm.
whole world, maybe at that time. He's the guy, you know, he's the Jesus of the day. Um, but he doesn't take that opportunity to like flex his ego. He takes that opportunity to like quiet the mind. You see, this is very like, this is the part that the soul doesn't want to accept down here, is that this journey keeps going and going and going, and it never ends. And more than anything, the ego wants to like win this game and be done. And I mean that, like, it really does. It wants to beat the game. And it's so funny because down here, when we beat a game, what do, Sean? We
Start
log
another
off and
one.
we never think about it again. Yeah,
True.
yeah. It's like, it's done. It's done, you know?
Eh.
And yet
Some, most of the time, but like sometimes, like I still think and talk about the French game, Expedition 33, and I finished that a few months ago.
um
But yes, in general, yes, you
in
close it and you forget
it's
about it.
yeah, you close it and you forget about it. And it's this, like, the reason why I'm bringing that up though is because I think this is very relevant to what you brought up about purpose. Because the ego, when someone told me that I chose to be down here, someone that knows, um, I got angry. I was probably 26 and I got pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
Um, because it was really threatening and angering to me, triggering to me, that I would choose to be down here. But then the ego tries to like solve its own problem, because it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna beat this game and I'm gonna become the wisest. Like, see, that's the thing. It's like the Nick Fuentes thing, right? Like, he
Hmm.
says, you think it feels really good to be right all the time, but it actually feels terrible. But
Yeah.
the thing is about this world is that we can go on comparing ourselves indefinitely, be, because there's so many people to compare ourselves to. But Nick Fuentes, he gets one of the unique sort of like Mount Fuji perspectives, because like, he just happens to be the best at his
Craft.
discipline, his craft. And I've actually glimpse this as well. Like, when you're just the best at what you're doing, it's so miserable, it's so lonely. More than anything, you actually seek God just to find a friend, just to
Yeah.
find a colleague. Like, you, it's so miserable to
I've heard him
be
say almost
the
those exact words.
yeah, that's amazing. It's so miserable to be in these places. And so, like, I my point of bringing all that up is because it's like, the ego says, I think his name is Neem Karoli Baba, that the guy that I sent you, I think that's his name, Neem Karoli Baba. it's like it's so tempting for the ego to say, well, I'm going to be the Neem Karoli Baba of my discipline, my craft, my interest, my passion, my workplace, my own navigation through this life, and then I'll be happy. And I bring this up because it's like Neem Karoli Baba is such an example, just like Nick Fuentes is recently, of like being the top of your craft and saying like that this is that being at the top of your craft is not what you think it is, because that's the ego trying to kick the can down the road. And so it wants to stay alive, i.e., keep commenting on everything. And
Right.
so it keeps saying, when I'm the best, then it'll be different. And it's not different.
No.
Like it's just not different. Like it's actually a little worse. And this is we'll probably continue to talk about this in the podcast or whatever, in the show, as we continue along here. Like it would probably take many hours to explain fully, but the point is that the ego uses purpose as a way of like imagining a Mount Fuji type perspective, but as an ego. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Imagining being Neem Crowley Baba, but you're still an ego. Like you're still functioning
Yeah.
based on the voice in your head, and but now you're the smartest guy in the room, and you can do the most miracles, and you're the guy that everybody goes, oh,
Yeah.
Neem Karoli Baba, what do we do,
Everybody wants
and
the gear and the titles. Nobody wants the mindset that and the thought patterns that follow those.
exactly, and everybody wants to be as powerful as Jesus. Nobody wants to be as surrendered as Jesus.
Yeah, that's great. Well said.
um
Uh,
So yeah, I just say that because it's like, is purpose important? Absolutely, and we should continue to be purposefully focused on some level, but don't think that that's the end. Finding your purpose and being the guy in the room, that's actually probably more than anything the starting point. You know what I mean? Nobody realizes how much they have to learn but he who thought he has arrived, you know, and and the dude who said that, the only person I've ever heard say this, and he's probably to this day one of the most wisest people I've met, just innately wise, kind of like a Braden in his own right. The dude who said that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
right.
He um I met him after a few years in hermit mode, bunkering down, reading these very old tomes and manuscripts, and thinking that I was discovering this world that I assumed nobody had encountered before me. And then when I met this guy, I was like so incredible, like I was like in shock that he knew many of the things that I had like kind of discovered in my hiding hole. And I told him that, and he said, "You ever watch the show? I don't know. It's a really famous show. There's like a doctor and Morty, something Rick and Morty, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
Rick and Morty."
Rick and
He
Morty.
said, "You ever watch Rick and Morty?" And I was like, "Oh, not really." And he goes, "Well, there's this line from Rick and Morty where he says he goes, the first thing you realize when you invent interdimensional time travel is that you did not invent interdimensional time travel." Like, because the idea is that it puts you into a new realm, like
Yeah,
as soon as you quote unquote invent interdimensional time travel, now you're in a realm where all of these people are doing it, right? and
yeah,
so and so one of the greatest gifts of mastering a craft is like becoming an expert in something, is learning that you're actually a novice. Even when you're done, you're
yeah,
you're 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 in a lot of ways you're like a self-aware novice. You know, like you now know that you don't know, and that's a big difference, you know. um so I just say all that to say, like, yes, we should keep striving towards like managing our attention, finding our purpose, being the best version of ourselves, but also knowing that, like, that's not the end all be all. Max level is just, it just puts you into a different pond,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Where now there's a whole new world, so to speak, a whole new horizon to traverse, and life is like that. Life is like that. So, um, we can definitely strive, but also having the humility, um, to know that at the end of the destination is just more road. I think. Um, Jesus, if he were down here right now, would be like Neem Crowley Baba. When people would seek to put him on a pedestal, he would he would reverse it, you know. Um his message was not so much that I'm the Christ, but that we're all the Christ.
Hmm.
And what you see is actually, it's the journey of all of us. It's not the journey of one of us. To think of it as the journey of one of us is to make the separation real,
Hmm.
and the separation is not real. You and I were never separate from God. God has never left. He's never gone anywhere that without us, or we've never gone anywhere without him. It's the whole thing is a dream, and yet, even though that's true, it doesn't mean we just get to write off this whole earthly existence
Yeah.
and just say
Still,
it
still
doesn't
gotta,
matter.
still gotta play our role.
We still got to play our role. We still have to learn.
Yeah.
So bad the ego wants to get to a place where it just doesn't have to learn anything. And what Nick Fuentes is trying to tell us, who is a modern day Neem Crowley Baba, is that that's not the end game. Like, you don't want to be me. You don't want to be someone that is now basically unable to, you don't want to be someone who has nothing left to learn. Like, that's not where you want to be, because because Jesus, when anybody would try to praise him, was constantly like, no, praise the Father,
Right.
you know. And that's not an act of humility. That's not a weird show business trick, marketing ploy that he's doing. It's very real. Like that which is the most powerful down here doesn't need to exert any show of force ever. Like like the most powerful thing that can be imagined is something that doesn't need to push anything. Like, it's really great to imagine a bigger version of Mike Tyson who's just pushing and shoving, and to call that God. And we've been doing that because of running off the backs of the World War II theology type of stuff. We just kind of imagined a bigger Great Britain, and a bigger, stronger king. And we'll just call that God, and we'll just, but what happens is the ego is actually projecting its own ego onto the king and then worshiping itself. So
Mm.
when we think of God as like the toughest guy in the room who's going to like push and shove his way into everybody's business, that's actually the ego projecting an imaginary version of itself.
Yeah.
onto another identity and then worshiping that.
Kind
And
of,
that's like,
yeah, sort
yeah.
of what I understand of, like, how the Pharisees thought the Messiah would look.
Yes, exactly. So this idea that like they were trying to bully people less than them, so they imagined someone who would bully everybody, you know,
Hmm.
and manipulate everybody. And yeah, like I love that reminder from Neem Karoli Baba of just like no, like the ego never gets to be king. You, you are king. You are the king. You are God. We all are, but not the ego though. The ego never gets to be king. As weird as that sounds, like it just never happens. Like the ego's forever imagining this hero's journey till it gets to be the king. Like it imagines itself as a beggar and it's just gonna rise in the ranks like Dragon, whatever that dragon game was. What was that big there was three of them, Dragon Age.
Dragon Age,
Uh,
yeah.
I didn't I didn't play all of them, but one of them you're rising the ranks. I was playing Dragon Age 2, and it's this hero's journey, and the ego loves to project onto the screen that story. The like, oh, I'm rising the ranks and I'm finding my purpose and it's all gonna be great someday, and I'm gonna just die so happy. And like what Nick Fuentes and Neem Curly Baba are sharing with us is kind of like, no, that doesn't the ego doesn't get that
Yeah.
thing that it's looking for. Like that's not
Like
real.
the end of
But what
Willy Wonka, you get nothing. Good day, sir.
you yeah 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 that's such a great wow there's a lot of wisdom in that movie, right? Like um the humblest, right? The humble, the person who never dreamt of being king gets it, right? Like it's that kind of reversal. It's like this still presence that's behind everything, existence itself, that thing that we always overlooked when we tried to earn our credentials to be worthy of like love or worthy of whatever you want to project, like just to love ourselves, that thing that we say, well then I'll be proud of myself, or then I'll be okay, or then I will have made it, or then life will be worth it, or then my pain will have been worth something. That thing that we're all striving for is already here, but we overlook it. And like so the ego never gets that arc that it seeks, but that arc that you're seeking is already here, and it's being overlooked. And that's kind of all I can say about it, is like God is already here. It's already fully in you. You're already king. You're already the entire universe. But when you choose to identify as a perspective of a limited version of yourself, like one that is separate and has a story and has wants and dreams and traumas, these type of loud voices, when you choose to identify with them, you are powerful enough to imagine that you are them. Just like when you're dreaming, you're powerful enough to imagine your dream character. But when you wake up, you realize, oh, it was just a dream. And in the same is true for our waking identity. We're powerful enough to imagine I'm just Drew and nobody else. I'm just Sean and nobody else and nothing else.
Hmm.
Just that, just this little tiny character that I made for myself. But that's not what you are. And it doesn't matter how many thoughts that you've had suggesting you're that, thoughts don't change what's here. You can have all the thoughts in the world forever and ever and ever, but existence remains unchanged. Consciousness remains unchanged. What is remains unchanged. And so the egoic identity, the egoic dream character we role play as, is a very scatterbrained, rushing around entity. And the God version of you is the same being, but it has infinite patience because it knows it's an eternal being. So there's no need to rush anything.
Right.
And that identity is actually shared, and you and I and any listener can tap into that part of themselves. And the more you tap into the part of yourselves, the more you'll realize that you are existence itself. Um, but we're overlooking that in order to focus on the tiny identity that we've made for ourselves. And so as we begin to grow out of, or maybe you could say grow into, the awareness of the unity that's here, we'll grow out of obsessing about the separation that's here. Because on the surface, I have some problems and Sean has different problems. So it seems like we're two different people that we've made for ourselves based on all of the thoughts that we've been thinking up until now. But if you look past that, if you so to speak, like get over that, you'll see that there's a greater unity here that John and I right now can actually feel, like it's
Mm.
tangible. Like
Yeah.
there's a unity here. And that that unity can never change. It's always here. So while we walk this apparent road of separation, unity is always here, and you only ever experience your attention. So long as we value unity over separation, we will start to experience more and more that we are in heaven, where there's only unity, and less that we are in hell, where there's only separation.
Separation. Yeah. Well, well said. I say we stick a fork in it right there.
Beautiful.
Excellent note to end on.
Sounds good,
As we
brother.
are coming up on the time.
Perfect.
So what
Nailed
I'm
it.
so
Nailed the time too.
yep. So if you're watching the replay of this, if you want to ever pop in and see us when we're live, it's weekdays. What? Not weekdays. Sorry, it's Wednesdays, which sounds a lot like weekdays. It's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Sometimes it's a couple minutes over, but aiming for anywhere from 7 to 9 or 10 or whatever feels good. But yeah, pop in and shoot us a line sometime. And
Beautiful.
we'll see you next time.